Everybody's probably going, what the heck? Okay.
All right, guys, we are here. It's Conflict Radio. Today is April 5th, 2021. I see a bunch of y'all in here already. Hello to Michael Bowers, Spartano Negative, Apex here, Tony Frandon, Ivan Langley. We have got a great show lined up today. Tom, you there?
I am here. Absolutely, I am here.
I'm
I
hearing
just,
an echo. Do you have a headset on?
I do have a headset on.
Oh, okay. Well, that's
No. We sounded great before, so same thing.
all right. Well, here we go. We've got
We'll
Tom
do it.
Warner. Okay. All right, everybody. We've got Tom Warner with us today. Now, it was September 1st, 1969, and 10-year-old Tom Warner was living in the Berkshires town of Great Barrington, Massachusetts, with his 6 siblings in his family's 1835 homestead. That evening, he was next door coloring with his neighbor when mental telepathy called him to leave his neighbor's house and go home. A historic event was about to occur. All noises disappeared, and in an instant, a UFO dropped out of the sky and he was abducted. Tom, is that pretty accurate?
That's very accurate, actually. And Michael, thank you for having me on. And I'd like to, I appreciate having me on, and so many viewers around the world listening in, and I appreciate the time to have a discussion about different things here tonight.
Yeah, I'm fascinated about your story. I actually watched a Netflix Unsolved Mysteries episode, I guess, on the whole event, and you were in it.
Yes, it was bizarre how the whole thing came about. First of all, I have to tell you, I was never going to discuss any of this. I, people locally knew that this had occurred. Certain people knew that it occurred to me, and we just didn't want to talk about it. And someone was promoting, that he was involved in it, and did a lot to promote the whole knowledge that this happened in the South Berkshires. While most of us were saying like, no, let's not talk about this. But it slowly got out. I did a documentary, and then I was in New England Legends, and I thought, okay, that's good. No one will bother me now. And I got a call from WGBH out of Boston, and they asked me to interview, and I did. And about 2 months later, I get a call, and then my daughter says, Dad, it was Unsolved Mysteries. They want to talk to you. I'm like, uh-oh, okay. And she goes, call them back. I said, after lunch. And my daughter, she loved Unsolved Mysteries with Robert Stack in the old days,
Uh-huh.
and she was a big fan. So I called back. And, I was hesitant at first. I just didn't want my whole life opened up to everything that was going on. And I agreed to do it if they were going to tell us the truth about what happened that night. That night wasn't just about one different family. It was about not only just myself, but others were involved. So I wanted the whole story told. So Terry Muir of Muir Productions out of Burbank and her executive Bob Weiss flew out from Los Angeles, and they came to interview us. And we're sitting in my library, and I told my story, and they were all like, wow. And then they asked Jane, my neighbor, who was watching me the night I ran out. And Jane says, well, I was on the phone. She said how she was on the phone. I came into the room like really panicked and said I had to go home. And she said he bolted out and he ran across the driveway, and he got to one spot and a beam came on him, and he was running in the beam, but he wasn't moving. And Bob's looking at her saying, what? And he goes, and then he disappeared right in the beam. He was gone. And Bob looked, what do you mean he was gone? And Jane says, he disappeared in the beam and he was gone. And there was a UFO. Bob was like, what? And she goes, and then he was gone for 7 minutes, and they put him down at the other end of the property in a beam at the other end of the property. And Bob looked at Terry, he goes, we have a story here.
Yeah,
And that
I'd
started the whole
say.
thing.
Now, when you were running from the house, I guess I was reading somewhere or heard somewhere that you were like running in place once the beam hit you. Was your feet on the ground or were you
Well,
levitating off the
it's
ground at all?
it was really, I mean, the whole thing was really surreal, bizarre, everything. I'll go back to just kind of rewind a little bit, you know. So I was coloring with Jane's sister Debbie, and all of a sudden I had this weird feeling to walk over to the window, and I did, and I had mental telepathy, and this voice says, "You need to go home right now." And I looked at Debbie. I said, "I have to go home right now." And she goes, "Why? Is your mother calling you?" I said, "No, I don't know. Maybe it's God from those clouds. I don't know. Something's calling me from those clouds," I said. And I bolted out of the room, and from one room into the next room, which was a kitchen where Jane and Debbie's grandmother was. And I said, "I have to go home," I said. And I must have had a look on my face because when they saw me, they looked really frightened, which even frightened me more. And I bolted out the door, and you go out the door and you go into this next room, and the last part of the house to get outside was a coal room, and it was dark. And I was like flying by that time. And I ran across the driveway, and all of a sudden, when I just about approached this rock, everything went in slow motion. It was like everything, my movement, my hand movement, and everything, all the sounds just completely disappeared. I mean, they're gone. Like, you know, I always say that September crickets are so loud at that time in New England, and they were gone. It just like vanished. It was like crazy. And all of a sudden I got the weirdest feeling, and I looked like I wasn't moving, and I looked to my left, and a UFO had, boom, just dropped right out of the sky, and a light was on me. And this beam's on me, and I'm staring at this thing, which was pretty damn close, I have to tell you. And I'm just taking it in. I'm taking in the movement of the UFO. Like on the outside, there was lights of these colors. I'm a watercolor artist, and I've never seen colors like this. I mean, it's like, describe the color. Well, I've never seen that color before, but the lights were all going in one way, and then like a band of them going around the UFO. And then the next level down was going in the opposite direction, and the third was going the other way. And then the beam was coming out of the bottom. And all of a sudden my hands jerked back, and it was like, you know how if you're underwater and you're coming up for air, and that first gulp of air, you go like that, you know?
Yeah.
And only it was reversed. All of a sudden I was like, I like sucked for a second, and all of a sudden I'm having images. I'm like, talk about surreal. I'm having images, and my first image to my right is this girl, and I'm looking, and she's like freaking frightened, man. I'm telling you, she was really, the look on her face was like, oh my God, you know? And then I saw other kids on to my left, and then I saw two aliens, and then I saw what looked like a human alien, like some other guy, but you know, he didn't look totally human. And then I had an image in my mind of seeing a table, and then there was all the like panels and lights, and I kept seeing these lights, and they must have been from that bank of lights that was going around the whole UFO. And it's like I blinked my eyes, and now I'm fully conscious, and I'm like a foot off the ground and floating flat out. And then boom, I hit the ground. I heard my brother's voice call to me, panicking, "Run, Tommy, run." I said, "I can't. It's holding me in place." And you know, when we were kids, we played flashlight tag. You know, you're like, "Tag, you're it," you know, because we played it till the cows came home. And I was like, "This beam's holding me. I can't believe this beam's holding me in place." And I was pretty panicked. And that mental telepathy came on again, and they said, "You're okay. You're okay. We'll be done in a minute." And they said, "We're done now." And when they said, "We're done now," the beam went off. I was able to roll to my right and stand up and look at this thing, and it had to slowly rise to clear the trees to leave the yard. And it was gone. It went down to the west and then just vanished. And at that point, I was hightailing it from my house. I remember running in the house, seeing the telephone, where the telephone was when in our hall, and I went in a state of shock, and I don't remember anything till morning, the next morning.
All right, so let's see if we can't unpack this a little bit. You said that
Yeah. Let's reverse the engines here.
Now, you did say you saw some aliens. Could you describe them first, and then we'll move on from there?
Do you know what was really interesting was I had done drawings of these in our garage later, and my father was like, he was doing a project where he was going to put cardboard up, and then he put insulation, and then he covered it up. But at that time, I did drawings on the garage wall, and last fall, I had to rebuild my garage. We live in the same house as this occurred in the Warner homestead, 1835 Warner homestead, and I opened up that wall, and there was my drawings. I had done that 2 weeks after that. Wow. And the first alien kind of looked like, I have to say, like almost like Yoda-like, except Star Wars wasn't even thought of in 1969. It was like a little, very much low Yoda-like face and everything, and shape and everything. And the other one was like skinnier, longer, straggly, like hair, like long. And that must have been the female that I saw.
So it was an alien with long hair?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
that's what I drew. I mean, the thing that stood out to me most was seeing the fright on the other kids. You know, I mean, it's like, my God, you know, that was awful. There's not enough brain bleach to get that out. You just can't. It's like, you know, the human brain encodes different things, different events. For instance, you know, depends on the traumatic part of it, you know, car accidents, different things that have happened in my life get encoded. But those faces are probably one of the top 10 encoded things in my brain. You just can't get rid of it. That's just there.
So they didn't look like your typical grays that you see, is what you're saying?
You know, I don't know. I mean, you know, everybody had... No, I wouldn't... Not quite, you know?
What color hair did she have? Do you remember?
I don't remember color. I don't remember the color. No,
was it the same kind of hair like what we have? Or?
Yeah, sort of. You know, I mean, it was just something long. You know, that's what I remember, and that's what I drew. You know.
Wow.
It was like, you know, and I just like did different drawings. I drew symbols. What they mean, I have no idea, but it was interesting that I in my art over the years, I did put different symbols in some of my art, you know, when I was a kid doodling. And there was some of the same ones I did on those drawings. So I don't know what they mean.
All right.
Just something I must have seen, you know, certain things will enter your subconscious where you just draw them. You're not sure why, you know, you just do.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a fascinating story. I want to give a shout out to Lee Bodge, who showed up. Sam Smith is here, Hugh Garden, and everybody that's in here listening. Do give a like if you don't mind. It helps the algorithm to get more people in here. And do subscribe to the channel if you haven't already subscribed. I wanted to ask you, so when you saw the aliens and you saw like the people around you, the kids and whatnot, was there anything in the background that it seemed like you were on a ship, or do you remember anything in the background?
Without a doubt. I knew where I was.
You were on the ship.
Oh, I knew, absolutely.
So what did that look like then?
Well, the color of it was, you know, of course, you know, these are different colors. These aren't like earth tone colors that you're used to seeing, you know. I mean, it was hard to say. It was a metallic light. But like I said, there was colors that were going like lights that were like going around. You know, like if it would be like the most fastest marquee you'd see going around, you know.
Uh-huh.
But they gave color images. I can't say red because I know what red. If I say to you, Michael, it looked like a red fire engine. You can picture a red fire engine, but if it's a color that you've never seen, you can't describe it. You know, it's hard to say. But metallic, like I would say, grayish metallic, like was on the inside, foggy, like, you know.
Did it seem like you were in a room, or was it a large open space?
I was in a room. There were different rooms, like, you know. It was like I blink, I'd be in another space, you know.
Yeah.
And you got to, you know, so you got to remember at that point, I was in a state of shock. So it's not like you're like, okay, we're taking a tour here. We'll go down the hall. You know, you're like, oh my God, I'm 10 years old. And all of a sudden this thing has you, you know?
So
like,
while you were
wow.
in the ship, you couldn't move or anything. You were just kind of stuck in the position you were in?
No, for some reason I could move.
Okay.
I don't know why. I have no idea. You know, it was like I was being shown stuff, you know? I mean, and why, I have no idea. But it was like I was given the grand tour, you might say. Why? I often ask I have my different theories, but I was only up there 7 minutes, you know.
Did it seem like 7 minutes for you, or does it seem like there was like you lost time at all? Did it seem like it was longer than 7 minutes?
I just, you know, time was altered. And I knew it was altered. And here's how I knew, because Jane was watching me run in place. She said it seemed like 4 minutes at least. And to me, that was like a split second. It was like everything went in slow motion. Time was altered. How they altered it, I don't know. If I knew all that, I'd probably be working for NASA at this moment.
Yeah, probably. So it was like an energizer, I guess, right, from Star Trek. They like beamed you up.
That's the best way to say it. It beamed me up, Scotty. I mean, literally, I was in the beam, and I was gone, like in a flash. I mean, like just gone. And for me, it was like the air got sucked out of me. Now I'm up this thing.
And all your belongings, everything you had on you, were still there. Your shoes weren't on the right foot.
No, I was just completely like it was, you know. But what the show didn't say, and we'll get into this as we continue, was 2 weeks later. 2 weeks later, it happened a second time.
Okay.
And the second time I lost like 45 minutes of time.
Well,
I'll tell you, that was.
All right. Well, let's save that for a little later.
I just want to just do that as like we're going to go in that general direction to talk about that, because there were 2 weeks apart. So in this area, they'd be talking about, like in Egremont, talked about. Some people said around mid-September they saw it. Some people go, oh no, it was mid-September, and some other people, no, it was September 1st. I know it was Labor Day, because there were witnesses for both events in the area.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, let me go back to, you're in the house drawing with crayons. You said you had telepathy telling you to go home.
Mm-hmm. Mental telepathy.
Now let's talk about that a little bit. This wasn't the first time you had mental telepathy, right?
No, it really started when I was a child, you know, and I never understood it at first. You know, it was like, I thought, like, how can I hear this voice? You know, I'm like talking to, you know, I'm talking to somebody. It was at the time, it was this little girl who was about my age, and she, like, you know, just was reaching out to me. And I remember telling my mother at the time, you know, when I was little, I said, there's a little girl, she talks to me. She must be from some planet far away, I said.
Really? Do you think that was the girl that you wound up seeing on the...
No, it wasn't. No, she wasn't on that. But is it turned out there was, after this had aired and people had come forward after I was on Unsolved Mysteries, there was, I had identified the first girl to my right. That was Melanie, who was in the TV program with us. And I didn't know who it was. And we got to my freshman year in high school. I'm running, just trying to get to my next class. And I opened the door, and Melanie, who was a senior at the time, was coming through the other way. And my heart just about stopped, man. I was like, oh, my God. I knew I'd seen that face, and it was on the UFO. And she went by me, and I followed her to where she was going. And I asked somebody who it was, and they go, they joked. They said, she's a senior, Warner. You don't stand a chance. I said, no, that's not why. I said, I want to know who it was. And they told me. And I just kind of mentally put it in my memory. And then she had a younger brother who was a year behind. So when he got in high school, I sort of, was wondering, and then years later I heard it was their family that was, had the close encounter probably less than 2 miles from my house.
Okay.
So,
and she was the
anyway,
one that was next to
she
you.
was on that. Yeah. So she was on the UFO, but then there was, after this had all aired, people have been making contact with me from all over the world in the United States, and I won't mention their names or anything because I never asked permission to do that. But one was in Connecticut, and I remembered her on the UFO from seeing her pictures that she showed me when she was little, and she was abducted that night as well.
And how far was she from you?
Probably about 40 miles.
Yeah, now, for everybody listening, this was a huge event. This went from, it went through a whole bunch of towns, didn't it? It made a bunch of stops?
But what was never told, what people didn't realize at the time was that it started out all the way down in Long Island, New York. And then it came up to the Berkshires, meandered around here, but then it went to where I was on vacation 2 weeks prior to the event. And that was the last known place that it was.
So what was their purpose? What do you think they were doing? Were they taking samples of your skin or blood or anything?
Well, I think we were tagged, I mean, the fact that they could come back 2 weeks later.
Do you think they took the tag when they came back?
I think that they, when I was up there for 45 minutes, no, I think that's when I was really tagged. Yeah, just
Well,
it's okay. It's okay. It's we tag sharks, don't we?
Yeah.
And we want to know what they do, what their behavior is, whatever.
I'd hate to think of the human race being tagged by a superior species like we tag sharks. That's just scary to think about.
Well, doesn't scare me.
I get it.
Look, they could have killed me right on the spot. They could have said, "Let's look at his heart here."
Well, I'm sure they've done that to some.
Not me. I don't fear them because no, that's not their purpose with me.
So, was it the same amount of time that everybody was taking, or was it?
No,
different times?
Everybody's was different, I guess. Melanie, you got to remember, people go into shock when this happens. They really do. I mean, it's so surreal. I mean, to see this UFO sitting like 35, 40 feet above me, and it's like 35, 40 feet wide, 20-something feet tall, and it's just sitting there, not making a sound. No sound at all. Nothing. Just going, just floating right there. It's like, when the UFO was seen, when it left here eventually, it went up to Lake Champlain where I was on vacation, where we were vacationing. And it crossed Lake Champlain at that point on Willsboro Point in 1 second. That's 1/1000. It was across the lake. And more than one witness. There's a number of witnesses that saw it. In 1 second, that translates as going slow at 22,000 miles an hour. 22,000 miles an hour. That's what that translates as in a split second to cross the lake.
So
that's pretty fast.
Yeah, that is fast. Have you been able to look at pictures of UFOs or these new videos that the Navy has put out of the Tic Tac or whatever? Have you been able to look at any of those and recognize the craft that you saw?
Though that one was pretty fast because it went at different angles. I mean, it was interesting. You should say about the Navy video. Okay, so we wanted to talk about when we were discussing Unsolved Mysteries, when this was all being talked about and interview process and everything. We wanted to incorporate that the UFO went not only where I was on September 1st, but where I was 2 weeks prior to that. What's the odds of that? To go where I was, not just where I was at the moment, but where I was 2 weeks prior to that.
So every stop it made was a place you had been?
Yes.
Huh.
Yes, it was that's what made me go like, wow. And it was funny, like, for instance, excuse me, where Jane Green had saw the UFO up on Route 7, right? It was near the high school, where it's now Monument Mountain Regional High School. It's in that area. And when I became a freshman, I would look out at that spot and have mental telepathy every time I looked at that spot. And I would never understand why. And I mentioned it to a few people. And I said, there's something about that spot. I never even knew the UFO was there until I heard about Jane Green, who was going to interview. I mean, it's just like, it was like it's a hard thing to describe when you can look out and like you could look at a mountain and it's nothing. And then you could look at one particular spot and you could hear a voice. And it's not like, but you don't really talk about it because you talk about these things and say, wow, this guy's off his rocker.
Yeah. So,
anyway, so the mental telepathy, it's hard to describe because it started at such a young age. And I wrote my autobiography and I came forward and I'm on these programs because I want to help other people, because that's the only reason I'm talking even with you tonight, is because there's other people out there who've had these experiences who can't talk about them. They're afraid to talk to them. They're afraid to get ridiculed or whatever. And I'm talking to you directly. Whoever you are out there, I'm talking to you personally. It's okay. You're not the only ones out there. And I'm not the only one out. Have I had some of those? I've been the only person ever witnessing a UFO beam and disappear in that beam. And put down and witnessed. And 2 weeks later, witnessed under another UFO and lose a half an hour at a time.
All right. Well, let's talk about that a little bit. What exactly happened 2 weeks later? Was it the same beam again? Were you at the same place?
Well, it was interesting. So, after this UFO, you got to understand, after this happened, I was like, the sun's going down in 15 minutes. Okay, I'm not going outside. I just wasn't going out for like 2 weeks. And my brother convinces me to go out and have a catch with him. He goes, come on, Tommy, it's light out. It's still light out. The sun's starting to go, it's not quite even down yet. Okay. So I agreed to have a catch with him. And I threw the ball to him. He threw it to me. I threw it to him. He threw it to me. I threw the ball. The ball went about 15, 20 feet. The ball stopped and then went by me. And I'm like, what the heck just happened? Now I'm running after the ball. Okay? In the meantime, my other two brothers and a neighbor, are running up towards me as I pick up the ball, and they go screaming, "Did you see the UFO? Did you see the UFO was right over Tommy's head?" And I'm going like, "Oh no, not again." And then they go, "It's right there." And they pointed to it, and it was like, it was up in the sky, but you could see it, and it was the same damn thing. It was just sitting there with the same color lights, because I recognized the color lights. And mental telepathy said, "You're okay now." And that, it zipped, and it was like, oh my God. I mean, it went, like way, way, way beyond. And then now it's just a dot, and then a flash, and it was gone. And I realized the stars were out. So from the time the sun goes down to the time the stars are all out, that's over 45 minutes. And I'm like, I went into shock again. I mean, I was like a wreck after that. Like I was afraid to go out after that.
So did you disappear? Did the people next to you still see you? Or?
Well, what they saw was, they didn't see that part. They saw a UFO low, because they all knew about the UFO 2 weeks prior to that. And this same UFO was literally hovering above me. Now here's the odd part about this, okay? So 3 years go by, and we're up at Lake Champlain, and I'm on this dock. We're on vacation because we summered up on Lake Champlain. And as other kids, me and this other kid were some of the last kids on this raft before supper time. And I said, "It's my supper time." I said, "Okay, I'm going in," right? And we swim in, and we get about waist deep, and he looks at me and goes, "You know about UFOs?" I'm like, "No, I don't," because I didn't want to talk about it. And I'm like perplexed why he would even ask me such a question. And he goes, "Yes, you do." I said, "No, I don't." "Yes, you do." I said, "How would you know that?" He looked at me, he says, "Because I was on that UFO, and I remember you and your brother. I was ID'd on the UFO, second UFO."
So your brother was on it too, then?
Yeah, he doesn't want to talk about it, and I don't blame him. So some people want to talk about it, others
has he
do
talked
not.
to you about it, though?
Of course.
Okay.
Of course, I mean, but that's if someone doesn't want to talk about it, you don't push them. The guy who ID'd me in my book, I call X, like it's in X-Files, and he was about to spill the beans. And he says to me, his new wife was a photographer, so he sends me these pictures. I thought it was a speck on my screen, so I cleaned my screen. I'm going, just maybe that's in the picture. And I blew up the picture, and there was a UFO in the picture. And I said, "I think you need to blow that picture back up." And it freaked him out, because he was like, "They're after me. We can't even." He says, "If I talk to you about this, if I talk about you and UFOs, they're going to come after me," he says. And he says, "We're never going to talk about this again." And it was the last conversation I had with him. That was it.
All right. Well,
and you can't blame a guy.
Yeah.
I mean, he's thinking, okay, he knows what's happened. He knows some of these things. He's known the things that have happened to me, and he's like, this is too close to home, and it's happening again, and he didn't want to bother.
All right. So I'll give a shout out real quick to Scott Quigg. He says hello. Barry's still here. Barry, I think I've got your hoodie ready. I think that's the one you wanted. Just check out the store, and you'll be able to find it there. Let me ask you a little. So, what do you remember from the second time?
Hardly anything. Just the feeling. It was very foggy. That's all I remember. It being very foggy. It wasn't like the first time where I was able to see different things. This was like, man, I must have been really knocked out. To lose 45 minutes and just have a few minor images like the first time, that was it.
Yeah. So what kind of images were you getting in your head?
Same as the first, just something familiar like the first UFO, but we just it was like a blink of an eye. I mean, 45 minutes was gone in a flash.
Yeah,
And
I've heard that somewhere else where the aliens will actually communicate with you, and it'll be mostly images. They'll just show you images. And I always
well,
thought that was
I,
fascinating.
I know I was on the UFO. In fact, in the discussion, the fact that someone ID'd me on that UFO. So I was 2 weeks prior. I was witnessed in a beam, disappeared, witnessed, put back down on the ground, and then ID'd on the second one. And it's like, you try to go into denial. It's like, no, that
Did you have
happened.
any marks on you or bruises, or did you have any pain anywhere?
Nothing I'm going to talk about.
Well,
But yes,
yes.
yes, but I wouldn't discuss it.
Okay. Well, I guess
No,
that's fair enough.
some things are off out of bounds. That's out of bounds.
All right.
I just have a scar where I shouldn't have a scar. That's it. And we'll leave it at that.
Okay. It's not like you're like Cartman on South Park.
I didn't watch that one.
Oh, you
Sorry.
should check out that one. Cartman gets abducted by aliens. It's pretty funny.
Yeah, of course I've heard every probing joke there's ever been.
Barry says that Travis Walton was also sucked up by a beam witnessed by 6 other people, and he came back a week later. Have you heard that story?
No. I've met Travis. I actually what it was is when they saw Travis and the beams came on, they hauled ass out of there. That's what I was told.
Oh,
They weren't sticking around.
yeah, they didn't stay.
But to be fair to them, when I was stuck in the beam, none of my brothers came out to try to save me either. So you can't blame anybody.
And they were watching you, right? I heard the witnesses saying they were
they literally
watching
me.
you stuck in this beam, like run in
Right.
place.
And no one was coming for me. It's just like, all right, we'll have to sacrifice Tommy. That's it. For the good of man, that's it.
Yeah, that's a lot what we'll do today, right? Like with the cell phones and everything.
Right.
We don't help nobody, nothing. We'll just watch, and maybe we'll record something on the phone.
Well, I've saved many lives over my life, and it takes a unique individual to do that. So, but I don't blame anybody that doesn't, But something so bizarre. Would you go out and try to pull somebody out of a UFO beam?
Well, I would go out and try to get sucked up in the beam myself.
Yeah. I don't know. You'd have to find out at that moment, I guess, right?
And be like, "This is a transporter. I gotta go."
Gotta go. I mean, it's like, I decided to write my autobiography for a number of reasons. Okay, and I swear on my mother's grave, it wasn't to sell books. I just wanted to record the whole thing so that years down the road, because I look at it from a historical perspective. I want, hopefully, God willing, that I have grandchildren and they carry on this whole thing, and that I wrote it for them, future generations.
Yeah.
And I figured if I had 10 copies, I'd good, And this was I started it before Unsolved Mysteries even called me.
All right. Well, Apex wants to know.
So I did it for that reason at first, but as I got into it, I realized that I needed to try to tell the story so that it helped others. Because my goodness, some of these things that people write to me, I was like, wow, amazing.
Yeah, and I'm actually starting to get some really good questions here in the chat. If anybody listening has any questions, feel free to throw them up there.
Yeah, and by the way, I just want to say Sean Jackson in Glepsley Aerial Photography in Australia, who's tuning in. Thanks a lot. I appreciate it. To tune in to listen to me. And Elijah Drake from Cincinnati, Ohio, And The Adventures with Steve Bonds. Steve is a film guy who really listens to you and everything. Steve's a good guy. He says he'd love to interview you sometime. He says.
Who, me?
Yeah, he says he listens to you, man. It's like I said, oh, I'm on Conflict Radio. He goes, I listen to that. He says, so.
Well, have him send me an email. I'll always look at stuff like
Yeah,
that.
he's tuned in right now, so I know he's listening. You hear that, Steve? Do what the man says here. Okay, thanks. That's it. Okay. Okay.
Well, Apex here, he wants to know, Conflict, hey bro, ask Tom what sensations he felt inside the beam, if you would, please. That's a good question.
When it actually happened, it was like the air got sucked out of me. And it was instantaneously. It's not like you see this, woo, and I floated up slowly. No, it was bam. It was like Star Trek, man. Energized, boom, gone. Just like that fast. Just bing. That's it.
Wow, that's awesome.
I mean, it's like it defies. It really I try to think about it, and all you people out there listening, think about this, okay? If we had an F-15 fighter, and if we could fly that, because I can't fly it, I don't even pretend I could even fly a Piper Cub, okay? But if we could, and if we could go back even 200 years ago, which is nothing, 200 years is nothing in time, they would be shocked if you buzzed over a battle of, Bunker Hill and zoom right over. They'd say it's a god, it's a what? They wouldn't be able to even describe it. They wouldn't know.
Or they might have seen them a lot more than we are back in those days. Let me ask you a question.
Because Ezekiel, even in biblical times, people say Ezekiel saw the wheel. What wheel did Ezekiel? What wheel did you exactly tell? Could you tell us more detail on that?
Yeah, there's a lot of stories coming back.
Yeah.
I mean, they made a whole series on it. Just watch Ancient Aliens. And Barry wants to know, have you had any skin cancer? And I'm asking that because it seems like I've also heard a lot of stories of these alien people that are abducted have amazing health. Have you had problems with your health, or have you had really good health?
I'm amazed. I've been blessed with good health. It's we said about skin cancer. I have to tell this, okay?
All right.
So I was a painting contractor for many years, paint houses as well. I'm a watercolor artist as well. But back then I did a lot of painting outside and everything. So you do a baseline check with a skin person, doctor, whatever. So I go up and I go in the office. He turns out the light. He shows me this wand. It's like bluish, purplish, and he says, I just go over your body and see what I see, and we'll mark anything if we see anything. And it's like, I was a nervous wreck, And so he goes up, zip, zip, and he stops and he turns on the light and he looks at me. It does it a second time, and he turns off the light and turns it on again. He looks at me. I look on I thought I was done. I thought, oh my God, this is it. This is it. I'm all done, right? And I said, Doc, is there something wrong with me? He goes, and he says, hold on. He turns off the light a third time. He turns back on the light. I said, seriously, Doc, am I like in big trouble here? He says, no, you're fine. He says, there's an Aztec legend, I think he said, something to that effect, and he says, that certain people's body glow. I said, yeah? He says, your body glows. I'm like, what? He said, yeah. And then he asked me to give a lecture the next day at a private college, and I agreed to do it, But I'm like, what did he see? It's like, why was that? I have no idea.
Yeah, well, I mean,
it was just bizarre. To me, it was bizarre.
Technically, if your entire body was broken down, beamed up into a ship, and then broken down and beamed back down, I would imagine that it's going to have some kind of effect on things, right?
I don't know. I couldn't find that in the UFO manual.
Did you have good memory of things afterwards? You didn't lose any memories that you had
No,
before?
no, no. And I've had plenty of injuries where I could lose memory, but no.
All right.
No,
So it's not like
I
it
have
it didn't
uncanny
affect your
memory.
brain or anything.
My memory is like I remember being in a crib when I was 2 years old
Yeah.
and
Well, I mean,
taking a pillow and throwing it at my brothers and thinking I'm going to take the twins out on one throw with my pillow because they were in a pillow fight. And I threw it as far as I could, and I looked and I'm like, oh, didn't even make it out of the crib.
yeah. I actually remember a lot of things too from being a
Yeah.
toddler. It's
Yeah, I
I
mean,
blow
I
my
have
parents away
many
sometimes.
different memories, and they're for many of them. I've had many traumatic events. Fell through ice. At 4 years old, there was a attempted abduction of me. At 4 years old, kidnapping. At 5, I fell through ice. Yeah, I mean, the list went on and on. I was like crazy.
What was that like, falling through ice? I've had nightmares of doing that.
What was like falling through ice?
Yeah.
Um, both hot and cold at the same time. You know, uh, I it was a river, and my brother said, you can walk out there. And, it's like, why is he saying I can walk out there? But I did, he's my older brother. And as soon as I did, the ice collapsed, and I went underwater and came back up, and I grabbed the ice, and I heard this mental telepathy saying, don't let go, don't let go. And I remember I could, even to this day, I can see looking down the river, and there was this peaceful tranquility of the water just babbling, But I knew that if I let go, I was dead. It was like no way I would have drowned. It was no doubt. And then it turned into a burning sensation, trying to get oxygen into my lungs because it was burning. It was so cold, It was middle of winter in New England. And then I got pulled out at the last minute, But it was like brutal,
Yeah.
brutal pain.
Yeah.
And they put me on a sled and they pulled me home. And by the time we got up to the house, my mother had to cut. My mother was a nurse, and she had to, had to cut off my clothes, And it was like just one of those things, My mother always said, cats have 9 lives, And she goes, you've gone through more than that, so you better be careful, she used to tell me.
Now, Barry brings up an interesting thing here. I guess we were just talking about it, that cargo planes, there were tribes on Indonesian islands that saw these cargo planes flying during World War II, and now they worship them. They build replicas out of bamboo. That's
Out of
pretty
bamboo,
interesting.
right? Because same thing, right? I mean, well, I did. What I did was, in a way, I turned around and I did a painting. I'm a watercolor artist, and I had to paint what I saw, and that's of course my cover of my book. And it was the scene that's in one of the last scenes that I was filmed in. Well, one of them at my house. It was actually taken in my studio of me looking at the painting, and it was like, it was very therapeutic, doing that painting. And here's what's really odd, okay? For some reason, and I'm a watercolor artist, I can paint both consciously and subconsciously. And like I would be thinking of something and it would show up in the painting. Now, if you look closely at the painting Beyond the Stars, to the left of the UFO in the sky.
All right, hang on a second. I'll bring it up on the computer for everybody to see here.
Okay.
Where do you have that painting? Is it on your Facebook page?
Yeah, I think so. That's the the picture, the book cover of to the left, and you can find this, and and if anyone wants to find me on Beyond the Stars on Facebook, I'm on that, or you can find me, any way you want. But anyway, in that painting, to the left of the UFO, there's the number 69 in the sky. No, I didn't paint that in there. It just appeared and it was subconsciously painting. It's not the only painting of mine that I've done that. But in this particular one, if you look long enough at the beam, you'll see an alien reaching down. Takes a while for your eyes to adjust, but it's there. I have people go like, "Oh my God, there's an alien in your painting!" Look, I'm like, "Yeah, it's there." So anyway, I do paintings. I mean, I did the painting because I wanted to have those images, and it was like reflective of what I was thinking. In fact, I did another painting that's in the Roswell UFO Museum that was both. I incorporated my experiences and the other experiences of this other guy, Tom Reed, who his family was abducted that night too, and I called it UFO Boy, and I actually put Tom's face on as the kid because I didn't want anybody to know. I didn't want to. I still didn't want to talk about it. But that painting's in the Roswell UFO Museum.
All right. So where's the alien on the painting again?
It's in the beam. If you look at it long enough, you'll see it. It's just like it's there. It's like it's kind of like an arm reaching down. It takes. It's one of those things. If you look at my art long enough, you'll see things that are in there. It just is. It's like I have one painting and there's it's called Willsboro Bay, which was where the other UFO was seen coming over Willsboro Bay, and on the left part of that sunset, there's a naked woman looking at two loons, two mallards, and mallards mate for life, and she's like looking down at it, and it was just something I thought subconsciously. So my point is, I got these talents that you can't be taught this. It's impossible. It was just like put in me. So I've had some bizarre talents that they're there, and we talked about them just before we went on the air. We talked about, so can you do anything? And I talked about moving objects with my mind, which I did when I was younger. And in fact, I was talking to someone, my friend that was in the book, and she was saying, yeah, I remember when you made a mobile, one of those mobiles that just sits up you put them up on the ceiling and everything. And she goes, you had the outer ring going one way, the next ring going the other way, and the third ring going the same way, the opposite way at the same time.
Yeah.
And she came in and she goes, you're moving that, aren't you? I said, well, yeah. But I eventually stopped because I was getting some headaches, and I'm like, I was like, I have to let all this go. I wanted to bury it at that point in my 20s. I just wanted to bury it. I didn't want to talk about it anymore.
So you just kind of embraced it now, right?
It went away for a while. I mean, things happened, which there's events in my book I'll talk about, and then the pace started picking up. And it's been picking up and picking up. And so I feel like it's a responsibility for me I feel like I'm a messenger, and I have to deliver that message.
Okay. So were there any markings or anything on the ground where the beam had hit? Did it kill the grass? Did it do anything?
No, not that I recall or anything. Not even on ours. It was nothing like that,
And you still live in the same house.
That's a good. It's interesting you should say that, because when in 1969 we were sitting. Now my father, I never heard of a UFO when I was 10 years old. I didn't know what the heck a UFO was. And we were up on Lake Champlain that summer of '69, and my father, he starts telling this story about how his boss was over in Vermont across the lake somewhere, he says, and his wife said that there was a UFO. She came home panicked. There's a UFO right over the hill here. And he goes, yes, dear. And he didn't believe her,
Yeah.
And so she turns around and says, and he goes, okay, tomorrow we'll go and look at the spot. And this is my father telling the story, and we're around a campfire, and we're like, what the heck's that? I still didn't even know what he was talking about. And they went back, and there was like a burnt mark, about a 30-foot circle burnt where it had landed. And he was like, oh my God. So he told my father this story because my father was going up on vacation on Lake Champlain. He told the story. So my father was like, he looked at us, and my other brothers had left, and I think it was just two of us there at the time when he finished telling the story. And my father had fear on his face telling the story. And normally my father would tell a story and he'd chuckle or something. He was serious. And he said, kids, if you ever see a UFO, you run, Yeah. It's like, I'm like, I don't know what these UFOs are, but I'm certainly not going to see one of them. I'm sure of it, And sure enough, like a little over 2 weeks later, there we go. It was there.
So you know exactly where the spot is? Like you can pinpoint it exactly?
I live in the same house I grew up in. This house we've been in for 6 generations. So, it's it was interesting when we showed the Unsolved Mysteries. We had a couple of Hollywood friends over, and we showed it on my neighbor's barn, which there's a barn in the way now, but from our view. But we showed Unsolved Mysteries up on the barn, and then we blasted big speakers and stuff. And I was kind of spooked out. I'm like, I was in it, and that's where the beam literally put me back down, was where we were watching it that night. So it was like very traumatic for me to watch it.
So it's just grass now still?
That field is grass. That's it. And where my painting shows where the beam is, that's an exact location. That's exactly what it looks like to this day.
You know what
Except
you should do?
The rock's not there anymore. They took all the rocks out. The big rock was taken out.
You should plant an apple tree or something there and see if it grows better apples or something.
It's interesting where the UFO came. They did plant apple trees out there, and the other place, the second was in my yard, which is from where we're talking now, that the UFO was probably about 40 feet from where I'm sitting right now.
Yeah, well, that'd be pretty cool for him to come back, right? It hasn't
changed much.
So David M. wants to know, has there been other ET interactions involving telepathy that are documented? And I'll say this, I know that there are, David M. I forget who I was talking to, but they were telling me that they were getting images telepathically. So I know that there are documented cases out there. Have you had telepathy with other people that have been abducted?
Yes, I do all the time.
What can you tell us about that?
Just that we can communicate, whether it's by email or by mental telepathy.
And how far away are they?
Out west.
So you're talking thousands of miles.
Thousands of miles, yeah.
And is it almost instantaneous, like a telephone?
Instantaneous, yeah.
Wow.
And they'll say, "Oh, you were thinking of me last night, weren't you?" Yep, I was. Okay.
Have you had any telepathy with other aliens since then?
Yes.
What do they say? Do they say anything to you? Do they tell you things?
Well, I don't like to get into it much, but I'm very cautious lately.
Could you think it could be maybe a government telepathy guy?
Well, who knows? Who knows? I just feel the need to be cautious. I also, I just have this thing where I really think that we're at a turning point. We're at a turning point with this Earth. We really are. And I did this first to help people. That was my first reason for doing it. And now it's to have another platform to possibly help others, not only help others, but help the earth. It's like we're in times that, we got to change our ways. There's no doubt. I'm optimistic.
So they're sending you warnings?
I'm a very optimistic person, I have to tell you. I really am. And I talked about it, not only in other programs, but in my book and in other interviews that I've done where, I said, we can't get off this earth as we are right now. It's not going to happen. Have we been shown that others can come here from worlds far away? Yes. Have they been documented? Yes. Have there been witnesses like myself? Yes. I mean, I'm not the only one that's ever been abducted. I am the only one that I know who's ever been witnessed abducted. And it's like, I've had a lot of bizarre things happen, and it's not like, and I believe that there's, with all my heart, there's human alien hybrids that walk this earth right now.
Oh, I don't doubt that at all either.
And you're going to look in my book, and I have talk about 2 encounters in my book about that. And with one that left me a note, and one where I had I'll tell you about the second one, because that was kind of...
What, it just kind of show up at your house and leave you a note, or?
No. I'll tell you that. I'll tell you that story because it's an interesting story. By the time we're done here, people go, "I don't need to read his book. He told me everything." Anyway, so I had this mental telepathy to go up to this particular location, which was called the Silvio Conti Research Center. And I go up. I'm thinking like, this place is closed. There's only I only saw one car. I'm thinking like, this place must be closed or something. So I came to the door and opened up the door. And Silvio Conti, he was a congressman, so it was named after him. And I look at his desk. I just look at it, and the alarms go off. I mean, like I'm trying to steal Fort Knox here, Mm-hmm. And I'm like, what the heck, So the guy comes out like real quick, and he goes, "You must have touched something." I said, "I didn't touch anything." He says, "You had to touch something." The alarm went off. I said, I'm really sorry, but I didn't touch anything." And he went back and he shut the alarm. I said, "Okay." And he was really on edge, this guy. I could tell he's really on edge. And he comes in and he says, "It's only you and this other guy. Some other guy's over in the corner. That's it. It's just us here." I said, "Okay." So, I got a computer, and I was doing research and stuff, and looking up people, friends that I wondered what they're doing. Trying to do a Google search. I thought something like similar. I thought that would be really cool to do, or something, and it had addresses and stuff like that. And the guy comes up and he goes, "Stand up," he says. I stand up, and he went on and he typed like I couldn't even believe their hands could move so fast. And he goes, "Let me know when you're done." And he had me on a program. I could look up anyone, and have their address and where they lived. It was like, I almost felt guilty. I'm like, wow. So I looked up a few people, and then I got freaked out a bit. And he walks over and he says, "Okay, stand up." And the program was gone. And he came over and he's sitting over in the area. And all of a sudden I realized he was talking to me through mental telepathy. And then he finally walks over and he says, "Where's the painting?" It was a painting I had inherited. Okay. And the painting, in this painting that I inherited, there was an image of the artist, and then there was another image, and the third image was of an alien. And this painting was 1903. And it had an alien in it. And he wanted to know where the painting was and all this stuff. But that's another part of the story. But it's a long story. You don't want to get into that. But anyway, so I'm like kind of freaked out that he's asking these questions. But I was so confident where the painting was that he couldn't get to it that I told him. I spilled the beans, which was stupid, But so then I'm doing my work, and the guy who was running the place comes up to me. He goes, "Where'd that guy go?" I said, "I don't know where he went." He goes, "Stand right here. Don't leave. I'm going to look for him." And he comes back, and this guy's like, "What is a ghost?" He goes, he's gone. I said, "What do you mean he's gone?" He says, "He's not in the building. And there's only one way, and that's by me. And he didn't go by me." And I got freaked out, and I said, "Well, I got to go," I said. And I left. When I got home, there was a note that was in my bag that I had left there, like it was a computer bag,
Mm-hmm.
and it was in it. And I'm like, the hell's this mean? And so I called the guy up and I said, "Did you leave me a note?" He says, "No." I said, "Are you sure you didn't write a note and put it in my bag?" He says, must have had been that other guy. I said, "Did you find him?" He goes, "No, I did not." A month later, they closed the place, and it was never open to the public again. That was it.
All right. Well,
the note is in my book.
So you still have it?
Yeah, I do. And it's bizarre stuff like that. I mean, that was bizarre,
All right. Well, we have to go back to where you're using telepathy to still contact the aliens.
Or whatever.
Yeah, or whatever they are. You have to tell us what are they telling you? Are
Just
they giving you? Are
message,
you giving you like a? Are they giving you like a warning or anything?
Sort of a warning. You might say a warning about humanity.
What? What are they saying?
How we're acting towards each other. We're going to destroy the planet, and we have to change. That's it. That's it in a nutshell, you might say.
I mean, any specifics or anything?
No, not like a bomb's gonna go off or anything like that, but just that we're destroying the planet.
So when you're talking to the aliens via telepathy, do you know right away it's alien, or do you have to try to figure it out? Like, is there a difference in telepathy?
I never really I never like calling them aliens. They're just, because the human alien hybrids they look just like us. Yeah,
but
they're no different than us.
Is there a difference in how the telepathy feels? Like, do you know right away it's them and not a human? Like, or does it all feel the same?
No, it's definitely different.
So you can tell right away.
I mean, I know, like, if I have a friend that had like a UFO contact or something, they all seem to have UFO contacts. I don't know. It's just how it turned out, I know the person personally, so that's different. That's different from than hearing mental telepathy that could be coming from another planet.
Do you think it could be coming from another planet?
100% yes.
Or at least from above, right?
100% another planet.
Well, that's pretty far.
Yeah, actually pretty far. But you ever, all the listeners out there, so I really want you to think about this. What is beyond that last star? We don't know because we don't have that capability. But to get that capability, like these ships and aliens, and I really believe there's many species out there just that have abilities that are similar to human beings that are different, whether they're gray aliens or whatever, or you see other ones that look just like us. you know, you see a movie, say like Star Wars, for instance, you know, you see these things and all of a sudden we can watch Star Wars and we can accept it. We can accept, you know, like, oh, they're on Tatooine or something, and you see all these different species and everything, and we accept it. But when it's in reality and it's real, we go like, whoa, are they grays? Are they this? And everybody kind of freaks out. But I don't freak out. They're just different, you know, just, you know, I mean,
Yeah.
humans have a problem with the fact that whether we're black or white or Asian or whatever, we have problems with that. Let alone, oh, the guy looks like a gray alien. Oh, great. You know, you know,
I don't think we have a bigger problem with that as what the media likes to say we do, honestly.
what, with gray aliens and stuff?
No, with when I'm talking about the whole racial question thing going on. I mean, a
Well,
lot of that's
you know,
media fueled.
none of my friends do anyway. But you know, you know, I mean,
You know, I don't know if anybody's
you
listening.
know, that's
you
a
need to
that's
you
a
need to go
different
listen to
topic,
what.
and I'm not really interested
Yeah,
in that.
you need to
We're
go.
talking about UFOs and gray aliens versus, you know.
Yeah, well, I mean, according to some people, there's a whole cat race. You know, have you ever had telepathy with a race of like cat people?
I've never never heard of cat people. You know,
Yeah, there's like a whole
it's like
cat species. They had a war, and God, I forget who the heck I was talking to that was telling me
right. I
about
mean,
that.
my cat George just looked up. It's just
Like,
yeah,
there you go.
you know.
Well, I mean,
You
that
know,
makes
okay,
sense to me.
here's one for you. Here's one for you. This was really interesting. It's not in my book or anything, but I'll tell you this story. So this is on mental telepathy. So my daughter and I go down to Discovery Cove, which is down in Orlando, and we're down there, and because I love dolphins, I am so just something about dolphins since I was a kid. You know, I just was so attracted to dolphins, you know, for some reason. So we went down, we did the experience swimming with the dolphins, and then they had a baby dolphin that was, you know, they were just, you know, starting to interact with it. So they said, well, you can come up and maybe the trainers will get the dolphin to come over with you, but, you know, don't reach out or anything. So I said to the trainer, I said, I can communicate to that dolphin. And she goes, oh, yeah? I said, yeah. I said, that dolphin, I can communicate to it. And I said, she goes, well, let's see you have that dolphin come over here. I said, okay. And I called to the dolphin in my mind, and the dolphin came right up to me. And I put out my hand, and the dolphin started rubbing its head against my hand. And I said, in my mind, I said, okay, and go back, and went back. And they're like stunned. And they said, let's see you do that again, because they want to see. You know, no way. Is this a freak or whatever? You know, fluke, whatever. And it happened the second time. And they go, how did you do that? The two women, the trainers they were stunned. They were stunned, you know?
Yeah.
And so, you know, animals, they communicate differently than, you know, they don't have words. You know, like I think wolves have they're just so soulful and everything, and deer. You know, I'll be driving down the road and a deer coming up, and I can just say stay right there, and the deer will stop. It's just, you know.
So you've talked to animals then? Do you talk to your cat?
Oh yeah, all the time.
Does the cat ever talk back to you? What is the cat? I mean, I'm just curious.
It's not like it's a voice.
Well, yeah.
It's a response. You know,
yeah, but
I
do
mean,
they give you like pictures or anything?
He can look at me. He can look at me, and I know he wants water. I say, "Oh, you want water? Come on, let's go." And I'll take him upstairs. He'll get water. I'll know what he wants because he, you know, just kind of. It's, you know, I have no idea how this happened to me. I really don't. It just, you know, it's just happened. You know.
Yeah.
I can't explain it. I can't explain it. It's nice, You know, I mean, there's certain people that have a sixth sense, and mine go far beyond what other people's do. I
Are there
mean,
some
from
animals that you could talk to easier than others?
mm, deer seem to be very intuitive, but there's a it's like so bizarre, you know. I mean, I do it all the time. It's just like part of my life. It's just something I do, you know.
Yeah, that's fascinating. So
I
I
mean,
gotta.
like there's a white-tailed hawk, and every time now I go to work, around the same time I go to work, the white-tailed hawk will sit on the telephone wire, and then as soon as I go, he'll fly along the truck and then leave. And this has happened like 3 times in the last 10 days. And he'll follow my truck and then off.
What about bugs? I mean, I don't know if that's a
No,
stupid
no, no,
question, but
there's not. It's never, first of all, if it's a mosquito, I have to communicate. SWAT,
yeah.
No, nothing like that. No.
I've got a mourning dove nesting on my deck. Maybe you can tell
I
it that
saw that. I
te-
saw that.
tell it
That's
not to fly
wonderful.
away when I go out there. I'm not going to hurt it. I'm just trying to get my laundry done.
Well, just why don't you try telling that?
All right. So I gotta go. We gotta back up just a little bit. You
We do.
touched
Okay.
you touched on something. You said that you can move things with your mind a little
Yeah,
while ago, and I wanted
I
to come
did.
back
I
to
did.
that.
Well, that's you know
I mean, what are you talking
the
like
human
like
the human the
pencils?
human being has talent. I mean, we use so little of our brain, and I remember when this happened the first time, and I don't even know why I did it. I just was looking at a mobile, and when I looked at it and I thought to spin it, and it started spinning. I'm like, did I just do that? The first time was by accident, and after that, it was like a challenge. It was a challenge. Could I move something? You know?
Yeah.
And then it got to the point where I was, I talk about it in my book where um, I, I, I made a chandelier move to spin, and that really astonished some people. And I'm like, I don't know. I thought I don't want to take this any further. This is enough. This is getting like yeah, it kind of freaked me out a little bit. So I stopped, you know.
All right. Well, can you tell everybody a story for about a minute? Because I've got to run and turn my TV just all of a sudden turned on all by itself, and I'm gonna run over
Oh,
there and turn it off.
right.
So tell it. So that
So
way that the
so
microphone
what
doesn't pick it
story?
up.
Okay,
So
I'll tell it. We're talking about the moving of objects, and
all right.
now that Michael's out of the room, we can tell the story about this, which was very unique, and I hope you're all listening out there. So here's the thing about that. So I moved this object with my mind, and the woman says to me, "There's schools for kids like you." And it turned out that her father was in the Men in Black. And I, it's, it's like I didn't even know what she was talking about at the time, but I had heard that expression one other time. And that's when I really said, okay, this has gone far enough. But I was also told at that time that I had to stop talking what I was talking about. So what I talk about now, as far as all this stuff, there was a time that I would have been forbidden to talk about it. And so these things are these things that had happened, people just didn't talk about them, you know? And you have people that are come forward, and I hope all of you are listening out there, and anybody needs to reach me. You can find me on Facebook. You can look up Tom Warner Beyond the Stars on Facebook. It's my Facebook page. you can send me a message or whatever, and I'll reach out to anybody that reaches out to me, because, you're not alone out there. And I'm not the only person that this is, had bizarre happenings and stuff, And if you look out at those stars, no, this is not it, and you have to realize that. And you have to, when someone tells a story, try to just listen to the story, not be, oh, the person's wacky or crazy or something, because they just might not be, And we lost Michael tonight here. He's gone.
I'm back. I'm back.
And that was brought to you by
brought to you by my TV. It just decided to turn on.
Brought to you by my TV. That your TV just suddenly turned on.
I probably got a neighbor with the same remote going, why isn't this thing working?
What the heck is wrong with my TV? It just turned off now, Yeah, you missed that part, didn't you, about the Men in Black? Sorry about that.
Just the beginning of it, but Spartan made a good point here. He says moving things is hard, stopping things is a lot easier. What do you think about that statement?
Moving things is hard, stopping them is harder. Stopping them as far as events is concerned is he's right about that.
Yeah,
in other words,
says
I think what he's referring to is like, I see events happen before they happen. And like I'll have like like they'll be presented to me, and it could be like the most odd thing, and I would know something was going to happen ahead of time. You can't stop that. It's like, I'm seeing into the future. It's the most bizarre thing. I mean, to tell somebody that, they'll look like you're like, he's got lobsters crawling out. No, it's just, this is the life I've lived.
Yeah, I think he was talking about the being able to move objects with your mind. Have you ever tried stopping a cloud?
No, why? I don't even know why you would.
I don't know, just to try it, right? Like,
that you don't want to mess with nature. Nature there's a purpose for that cloud going by. I mean, there's other governments that are trying to do that. They're trying to seed clouds and make things happen. It's not going to be good. You don't want to be doing that stuff. It's this, you have to understand, there was no water on Earth. Water was brought to this planet by asteroids and whatever. Okay?
Well, that's what brought all the life, too.
Right. You don't want to be what's the expression? Don't mess with Mother Nature, and you don't want to. It's so imbalanced from where we have this symbiotic relationship with everything from the ant to the whale. It's all important. It's all important.
Yeah,
the only thing we don't is mosquitoes, because I swat them best. That's it.
Can move them all away from you. Get away from me.
It's really funny, because it wasn't my wife and friends are like, why have they swatting? I'm not getting any bites in it. And I said, why aren't you getting any bites? Is it because your UFO stuff? No, it's because my hat smells so bad that the mosquitoes stay away from it.
Well,
I have a hat that's 20 years old. Eventually, my wife made me throw it out. I said, you know what's going to happen now? Now I'm going to be bitten by mosquitoes all the time. But anyway, back to the mental telepathy. It's such a hard thing to explain. Like, I talk to you, I have vocal cords. The thought process goes through the mind. And you can do it like when you teach a baby, an infant is born, it can speak any language on the face of the earth if you keep repeating words. And it can learn how to syllables and what's the difference between a baby that says bonjour or hello or or hola or whatever? It's because they were taught that, and the human mind is incredible. But mental telepathy is like, talking without words.
Okay, so
Only it's a thought process. When I say red fire truck, you see a red fire truck. But if you could think red fire truck and I hear red fire truck, that's mental telepathy, and that's how the best way to describe it.
all right, so if I'm thinking red fire truck, what comes in your mind might just be like a picture of a fire truck, or do you actually hear the words?
For me, it depends. I mean, if I'm sleeping, I can actually see something happening or for that person or whatever. But there's other times I can just hear. It was interesting. I have my friend and a big shout out to Katrina up in Maine, because Katrina was in my class. And I used to think, oh my God, I swear to God, this girl's talking to me in Algebra 2 and Trig. I don't know if Katrina has her ears on. I think she was going to try to jump in here. But anyway, years later, I found out that her family all had UFO encounter, and it's like, it's just one of those things,
Yeah.
It all seems that people have these UFO encounters and all of a sudden they have pretty strange abilities.
Well, I'm getting a lot of reactions to the telepathy in the chat. It seems like you're not the only one that is experiencing this ability. Listen to this from Timbo Rice. He says, I felt that communicating with animals is more so like a feeling and projecting that feeling onto them rather than speaking words telepathically, as in there is no language. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's feeling. I mean, if you're fearful for them running out into a street, your feeling is don't run out in the street, but you're conveying fear for them. So they interact as not words but feeling. He's right.
Yeah,
no, that's absolutely right. Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Katrina says, "Hi, Tom. I was."
Oh, you are? Okay. Thanks, Katrina.
She says, sometimes I couldn't fit in a word edgewise.
Oh, she's a sweetie. Yeah.
And Spartan says, let spirit take over. They know best. They have been around a lot longer than us. Let me ask you a question. What do you think about, having these abilities and having the experience that you have? What do you think about the soul and spirit and the reality that we're living in? Do you believe that?
Well, I do talk about that. They always say a good interviewer will ask the right question to get the right answer. And you're a very good interviewer, by the way, Michael. And that's a very good question, because people would say like, oh, well, you must not have any spirituality or anything. No, actually quite the opposite. I actually saw my own guardian angel. And that's probably one of the most spiritual things I think a person can have happen to them.
Did you communicate with it?
Absolutely. She stood right before me.
Did it look like an angel? Like with wings?
No, she looked like a 22-year-old girl. And this was the night before I was almost killed in a car accident, and she like floated up and she was there, and she goes, I missed my two brothers and sister, my two sisters and brother. And I said, well, what happened to them? And she goes, no, it was me. I died a year ago to this night. And she goes, you need to listen to my voice. And she saved my life.
So she was a human and then got promoted to angel, I guess?
Yeah, she died in a motor. I found out years later, which was bizarre. You remember the painting I mentioned before? Mm-hmm. Well, when I went to research that painting, I called Sotheby's, and this voice answers on the other end as a subcontractor. And I said to her, don't get me wrong. I said, you have the voice of an angel. And what it was she had the same voice as my guardian angel. And it turned out it was her sister. and the sister had gotten killed in California.
Huh.
It just changed my life of perspective of my abilities just went up like tenfold at that point.
So, but she never said, "Oh, I'm an angel" or anything. I mean, I would assume that that's
No,
just what your
no, she
assumption was.
just was there she goes, I'm here to watch out after you. You need to
Yes.
listen to my voice.
So you're
Uh,
assuming it was an angel. You don't know for sure it was an angel.
well, I
Just
didn't ask her for her angel
yeah.
ID, but
Well,
you
no,
know,
but you hear what I'm saying, right? Because I mean,
right?
technically,
She didn't
angels and
have the
humans are different
typical.
species.
She didn't have the floating wings or anything like that, but she's appeared before me a number of times,
Okay.
and I know when it's her. You know,
All right. Okay.
I know every time when it's her. So you know, she's there out there. So you talk about what 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 comprises of a human being. You can start off with the flesh and the blood and the cells and everything, and you can get into the spirituality with soul, and you can get into someone bizarre like myself that has mental telepathy and can all this stuff and all these bizarre traits that have happened to me and everything. And then you get into the soul, and it's the one question that human beings always, it's like a baby being born. It doesn't know where it's coming out of the mother's womb, nor do we know when we leave for here. And so we want this, that's why you have so many people reaching out. They want to know, where do I go from here? Is that it? Is that it? And,
Yeah, death has such a fear attached to it, doesn't it? Like there's so many people that are afraid of dying.
well, it's like, it's like taxes. They're going to happen.
Yeah.
You
Well, I'm
know,
more afraid of my taxes than I am of dying.
right. It's like, but, I always joke, I'm flying out of here anyway. So I always joke about that, but you never know. I mean, I talk about, okay, let me put it this way. Okay, so when you have memory comes up as recall based on events that happen to you in the human brain, imprints them in your memory, and you're able to recall it. You can think back to when you were, everybody that's out there listening, think about this. And you're thinking about Christmas for when you're little, or some event, and you can recall it back, and your memory can play it as a movie. Okay? So you have your movie of your life that plays. In fact, they said before you're about to die, your whole life will flash before you. And I can personally tell you, when I was in a car accident over 100 miles an hour, it's true. Time will just slow, and your whole life will flash before you. But for me, it's like I have two movies playing, and the other movie's of another planet. And that's the bizarre part. And that's the part for me to be able to explain to other people the hope that there's other things out there. And to get to that point for humanity, we really need to change our ways. And I think to myself, well, how do you want me to do this? I sat back and I'm thinking, like, how could Tom Warner, this artist, poet, how could he possibly reach out to humanity? And I'm like, I'm just an average guy. And all of a sudden I'm on a program called Unsolved Mysteries comes, and they have 40 million people around the globe watch it on one night. And now I'm a household name and everybody knows who I am. But it's still not the platform that needs to be told enough, and the story told in such a way that other people will finally get it. And I hope someday that somebody's out, that I've been offered possibly to have a movie made on my life, and all these things really explained so crystal clear, because it's one thing for me to try to tell a story. It's another to have a visual impact of the whole thing. And that's I hope one day that happens. You
Yeah,
know,
that'd
where
be
it can
awesome.
happen.
You should do
Yeah.
that for free.
What's that?
You should do that for free. That way it happens. Don't haggle them too
I,
much.
you know, the first offer I had was pretty generous. I
Oh,
mean,
there you
but
go.
I'm like I said, it's someone said about money. It's like I've never seen a Brinks truck in a funeral procession. You can't take it with you. It's not. That's not what you can take with you.
Yeah.
You can't take your house. You can't take Yeah, you can take your jewelry or whatever and bury it with you, I suppose. But
Do you ever have nightmares of the incidents?
yeah, I do. I I do, and the scariest thing is seeing the other kids' faces. It's
Really?
like, oh yeah, that's the most frightening. I can't get it out of my mind. Even when you're talking about it, then I can see this one girl. She's right, not only Melanie, but there was two others. They're just like, oh my God, the look of fear. I mean, just like you just never seen fear in someone's face. It's like written right on their faces. It's like because there's helpless, nothing you can do about it. It's just complete fear, and it's like, you know, it's not like you know you're just it's like beyond your wildest imagination.
Are
It's
you
not always
fearful?
pleasant.
Are you
What's that?
fearful of this happening again?
Not really. Not really. I mean, the human alien thing that's happened is pretty bizarre. But I'll tell you, there's one thing that happened. It was like a year ago, and I'll send you pictures. There are pictures on the internet on this, and I sent them even to Katrina, and so this was last February, and 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 then I picked up my friend, and it was February. Of course, it's dark, and I picked up my friend at a train station down in Wassaic, New York, and we come back up, and he can't start his car, and he says, "Tom, can you bring me down to the bridge? My friends are all meeting me down on the bridge," and I'm like, "Ooh," I just had this terrible feeling right away. I'm thinking like, I don't know if this is a good idea. The bridge that's where the UFO was seen. But I just had a funny feeling, as you say, right? So we're driving down Route 7, and he says, I think I saw a UFO. Stop it! I'm trying to drive here.
Yeah.
It's like you go in a spooky building. I think I saw a ghost over in the corner. You go like, no, 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 no. So I drop him off, and I'm coming back, and I'm like, damn, what's that light? And I'm trying to drive because you drive, you got to pay attention. So then I'm coming up Route 7, and I get to Great Barrington, and I take a left, and I'm going out Alford Road towards, my place here. And then I saw the light, and then I had the mental telepathy again. And I said, if you're there, leave me a sign. And when I got home, I pull in my driveway, and up in my lilac tree, right, there was this bright green orb. I mean, this thing was bright, glowing. I'm like, holy crap! I said, well, I asked for a sign, and I had my my cell phone. So I'm holding the cell phone out, and I kept clicking pictures, and this thing moved from the lilac tree onto the house, into the snow, kept moving forward, moving forward, moving forward, came right at me and went right into me.
All right. I
And
want to.
I took the pictures. I looked at them, and I show everybody the pictures, and they're like, "What the hell?" that's the same words. I can't tell you how many people go, "What the hell is that?" Oh my God,
All right. So I have a couple questioners from the listeners
Yes,
here.
okay, I'm ready.
Kali D. Kenzo, thank you for the super chat, says, do you think pain medication surpasses those feelings? I used to feel and know things, but not anymore since being on meds.
No, no, I don't take pain meds. I'm not in pain.
Well, I mean, like, have you ever had like a tooth pulled or something and got on pain meds and then weren't able to
No,
communicate or
no, no.
okay.
I'll take Tylenol. And actually, when I had my COVID shot, I had Tylenol. That's it. Yeah, no, I don't. No,
Okay,
no.
and Miss Jem
Continue.
wants to know: Is it telepathy? Is it telepathy when I think something and my hubby says that same thing I'm thinking?
Yeah, well, some people will say that's it, but it's like that's the beginning of it, and often because you're able to do that because you're in tune to each other,
Yeah.
especially as a couple. The more you're married, the more like for instance, I'll go into a grocery store and hear my wife say we need milk, and I'll get milk, and she goes, "Oh, you heard me."
Yeah. Timbo Rice says, and I kind of have my own answer to this, but I'll let you go first. Timbo Rice
Yeah.
says, "Deja vu. Please explain this when you have a second. I've remembered things before they happen and kind of sit and watch them happen just as a memory. It's hard to
Right.
decide the next move. LOL."
Yeah, that's true. I mean, whether you call it deja vu or seeing something happen before they happen, try to be more aware of it and understand the why of it.
I think that's
Like,
more a premonition than deja vu, don't you think?
premonition, deja vu. I mean, it's like it happened already, and you're seeing, but then you have to say why. Was there a reason why you're seeing that? You know,
Yeah. I would
you
I
know,
would
what,
tell I would
I mean,
tell
was
Timbo.
there a warning to it? To you know?
Yeah, Timbo, go look up premonition. We're gonna do a show on premonition soon because I have a
See, I mean, I had one where it was awful, really. I mean, it was a Friday when we were in high school, and
what, a
my friend
premonition or
told
a
me
deja vu.
premonition.
Okay.
We sat down and we're in, and he was one of my close friends. We were buddies. We went to school from second grade on, and we sat down and the song "Dead on Arrival" came on, and he looked at me and he says, "We're both going to know what this is about." And he was crying, and that was on a Friday night, and he was killed that night in a car accident.
Oh wow.
And so I could hear him talk to me where I was when that happened, and it was like he could talk to me. It's just uncanny, and I began to try to understand the soul and everything of human beings and what that all meant, and it's a very complex thing about premonitions, and it's like you're given warnings. Do we act on it and listen to those inner voices, or do we try to block them out and ignore them? And often when we block them out and ignore them, that's when you have a not good. You need to be in tune to yourself and listen
Yeah,
listen to yourself.
and I
The
would
human
go
mind, it's incredible. It's incredible. We're incredible, really.
I would go back to Carly D's statement with the pain medication suppressing those feelings. I would imagine anything like that is going to suppress, any kind of outside chemical you're bringing into your body is going to ruin that,
Well, it's gonna, I mean,
that connection.
there's also is an altering to anything, I mean, why do we feel pain? Or there's a message behind pain, you know?
Yeah. Well,
I mean, you have pain because your body's trying to tell you something. It's like, oh, I pulled a muscle. I'm feeling pain. Why?
well,
Because I did
sometimes I don't
something,
need the body to keep telling me that I chopped my finger off or something. I mean, if I
Right,
accidentally chop my
right.
finger off, I get it. Stop
You
telling
get it.
me I cut my finger off, right?
Right,
I'll
right. I
take
mean,
that
certain
pain
things
med.
are pretty obvious, but
Tom, it's great talking to you, man. It's great talking to you. I love where our friendship seems to be headed. I hope
right.
we stay in touch and definitely keep in touch with me, man. I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
you're
Katrina's calling me in my mind right now. She said, "Call me when you're done." I hear you, Katrina.
I think that you're I think you're a great person, man. Thank you so much for coming on the show and telling us
Michael,
your story.
I just want to reach out one more time to listen, everyone out there. You're not alone, and we're not alone, and we need to really take care of this planet and really start thinking differently. And if you want to read more, you can get my book. If you don't, it's all right with me too. It's like I wrote it to help people, but anyway.
So you do have stuff in the book that we haven't talked about on the show, just so everybody knows. Oh
yeah, oh yeah. And there's things in the book that I haven't talked about anybody too. It's like okay, there's okay. I touch on I always touch on stuff. I don't tell the whole story, but there's some interesting stuff in there. I think my favorite chapter is The Judge, the Mob, and Me, and the connection to that, and the connection to the Men in Black and government and stuff. Some of that's pretty interesting stuff, but that would be a whole nother show, man. Really.
Well, have you had the Men in Black come and kind of tell you to shut up, stop telling your story?
We'll be into a whole nother show here, man.
I know. I just realized
but the answer is yes. Right. I was told in my 30s, don't talk anymore. Just hush right now.
Well,
but I'm 62, so yeah, I
tell them not to tell their story.
Everyone wants to know information. The government wants to know information. People want to know information. Everybody wants to know information because we're curious, and so everybody's in the same boat. We're all curious. We're all curious about these things, So.
Yeah, Carly D says she has fibromyalgia and MS. Yeah. In the past few years, it's like I'm numb.
Oh.
So maybe telepathy those travelers and have them go and fix her up, huh?
Right. She can reach out to me. She can find me on Facebook. We'll chat.
All right. Well, why don't you tell everybody where they can find you?
Well, first of all, the book is called Tom Warner Beyond the Stars, and that's where you can find the book. And I'm on Facebook, and you can find me on Facebook. I'm easily findable. You Google Tom Warner, everybody finds me. It could be even on my watercolor site, Tom Warner Watercolors. I get emails from everywhere on different things I do. So it's all good.
All right, and the link will be.
Thank you so much for having me on, by the way.
Of course, man. Always a pleasure. We're gonna have to get you on again and talk about that Men in Black stuff a little bit deeper.
There's a creepy scene about that I was talking to a director, and we know which would be the last scene in the movie. It's like it's a Men in Black thing. It's like it scared the hell out of me, man. I'll tell you, it really did.
All right. And just so everybody knows, the links to Tom's website is in the description box below. Feel free to check it out. Go find Tom on Facebook. He really is a friendly guy. Send him a message and say hello. Yeah. Say, hey, I heard you on Conflict Radio and just wanted to say hi. And you'll probably...
Michael, it's been a fun interview, man. It went by quick and everything, and I appreciate you having me on and everything.
All right. Well, don't go anywhere just yet, okay? Hang on till the end of the show, and I'll finish talking to you.
And we'll chat. Okay.
All right. Just hang on a second. Don't go anywhere.
Okay.
Remember, you can always find us online. Just go to www.conflictradio.net. Make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Also, go look for conflictradio.tv. We're going to be broadcasting live on that from America's Stonehenge on May 1st up in New Hampshire. Tom, you're really close. Maybe you can come see us. On May 1st, we'll be at America's Stonehenge. Maybe drop in and say hi.
Okay.
And you can always find us on Apple iTunes and all of your normal podcast catchers. We're coming to you from Huntsville, Alabama. Until next time, batten down the hatches and be safe.